got a sliced nut.
Come to the right place to have it mended, haven't you?
Colonel, whatever's going on?
Come, come, Matron. Surely you've seen a temperature taken like this before?
Yes, Colonel, many times. But never with a daffodil.
My favourite scene in Carry On Nurse is the scene where they go into the operating theatre and the laughing gas.
Well, what happens if anything goes wrong? We have to amputate your leg.
Producers used to say to me, oh, you can make an epic now. I don't want to make an epic. I'm staying in my own backyard.
He's a dirty little... Thomas.
Ben.
Who's that? Miss Alcock. Miss Alcock.
The censor read the script and he said, I don't mind the actor who plays this character looking at the girl and saying, Alcock, providing he doesn't emphasize either the first or the second syllable. Because he had an idea you'd say, oh, cock, or something like that, you see. So I flattened it. I'd flattened it, as you probably remember. I just went, oh, cock. And the flatter I did, the filthier it got, you know. So he did us a favor, really.
My theory of music teaching is...
Alcock.
Of course you could accuse the carry-ons of a lot of sins, but in a way, their directness was very honest.
Do you favour the Swedish method? Well, I always say it's the same the whole world over.
You're a society playboy, Lothario. One of the siphon squirters and waiter de-baggers of this world. Happy days, eh?
Well, I suppose everybody thought it was me, really. I suppose there's a little bit of me always in those parts.
What do your friends call you?
Policewoman Harrison.
Oh, that's a nice name. My name's Potter, Tom Potter. None hotter.
I've found this kind of nut character who was eternally fond of women.
Mr. Bell.
Ding dong, carry on.
Wherever I go, people come up and say, oh, say ding dong. I go, ding dong. I go, oh, thank you very much. Tom Potter, nothing hotter. I mean, really. I'm doing Shakespeare and Chekhov now.
Oh, my darling.
I only did 3, which is quite extraordinary. Everybody thought I did 103. My personality is so powerful, I suppose. But I just said to Peter Rogers, and Jerry Thomas, I said, look, I do want to move on. I don't want to do any more.
Carry on.
In Carry On Regardless, which is among my least favourite of the series, Kenneth Williams is taking a chimpanzee for a walk, and he hails a taxi. In my script, they hail the taxi, looks askance, gets inside.
Can you take us to... I'll take you, but not your brother.
Now, that's a marvellous ad-lib from a London taxi driver. I didn't think of it, and thank him very much. If I get credit, that's fine.
I got a notice in a Bristol newspaper. It gave me personally an exceedingly bad notice. He called us all a load of rubbish, and in particular, Leslie Phillips. I wasn't in it.
And then along came Carry On Cruising, and I got a part as a barman for £35 a week, I think. No, it doesn't matter. I got a part as a barman, which I was very grateful for. And something happened with Charles Hawtrey. At the time, they had an argument of some sort. I don't know what it was. But anyway, Charles Hawtrey wasn't in the film. So they upgraded me suddenly from barman to chef.
Excuse me. I wonder if you could direct me to the kitchen. I'm new, you see. I'm sorry to interrupt you and all that, but I've been all over the boat. Ship. Oh, ship, boat, who cares, as long as it floats.
Who are you?
Well, make a wild guess.
The most important member of the cast was the title Carry On. I would not let anybody go above it. The trade press at the time said there's another Carry On being made, and if it didn't have Charlie Hawtrey in it, it wouldn't be worth seeing, or words to that effect. And of course, this went to Charlie's head a bit, and he not only, through his agent, asked for a lot more money, but he wanted to be the star, and a star, believe it or not, on his dressing room door. It became rather silly, so I said, no, we won't use him.
We set out to get as many laughs as we could into 83 minutes. I couldn't be more delighted. I'd love to be remembered as somebody who had something of a hand in making millions of people laugh. Over 40 years to date, and maybe more giggles to come. That's wonderful.
What makes us laugh? British comedy filmmakers seem to know a lot of the answers.
The seaside comedy, it's naughty. Not filthy, but naughty. That's what a carry-on picture is. Naughty, but not filthy.
I want to take my knickers down.
Pardon?
Well, they're on the pole over there.
Oh, I see.
People now look back and say, oh, yes, they say, oh, Carry On, that's British humour. But in fact, that wasn't, I don't think that particular humour was there until Carry On came along. They took it all the dirty postcard humour and all the kind of, you know, moody musical stuff and brought it all together.
Yes, well, I've got to check all your measurements, haven't I?
I've never had it before.
Never mind, the experience will do you good.
Well, it's like the old Angus McGill cards, isn't it? It's like when you've got the fat man standing in the sea up to his knees, this great big fat belly, and there's a little kiddie there, and he's looking around saying, I can't see my little Willie anywhere. Well, it's obvious he's referring to the chart. Make of it what you will. I mean, the Crazy Gang were doing it years ago, weren't they? It's all in the mind.
Hey, what's going on? You can't... What a sauce. Nurse, please. Oh,
what a fuss about such a little thing.
What's he trying to do, kill himself?
Are you a taxi?
No. This is a taxi. I'm a driver, he's a learner, and you're a twit. Now get out of the way, I'm in a hurry.
No, you must help me. It's my wife. She's gonna have a baby.
I learnt my trade in the Carry On films, watching and listening and being part of the Carry On team.
No, look, you must help me. I've got to get her to hospital. It's on the way.
How do you know it's on the way? You don't know which way I'm going.
No, the baby's on the way.
I was a juvenile lead. There aren't many baddie juvenile leads. He has to play the love interest. We were the only repertory theatre of the cinema. Carry On spying. I played about 8 roles.
Cafe Mozart, 10 o'clock. Cafe Mozart, 10 o'clock. Cafe Mozart, 10 o'clock.
And one of them was a girl in the doorway, from Vienna, I believe. I enjoyed it. It was quite uplifting to be dressed like that in those days.
Hello. Agent Bind. James? No, Charlie. Number? 00. Oh. Oh, what? I have no idea. And they looked at me and they said, uh-oh. Oh. I see what you mean.
I was threatened with a writ if I used 00 anything. The lawyers came on in a fussy way, and I said, oh, don't be silly, what's it all about? Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli had just made Dr. No, and we were talking downstairs, and they were talking about the success of Carry-Ons, and Harry said to Cubby, I think we might make a comedy. I said, I thought you had, and they were furious.
You're not supposed to wear it down there.
I knew all about the Carry-Ons before I did Carry On Spying. Kenny Williams, I was this huge fan of his. I just thought he was the best thing ever. And my first scene was with Kenny. As I got close to him, he said, oh, you smell ever so nice. You really, really do. You're lovely. You're really, really lovely. And that was it. And it was a friendship made in heaven. We became such good friends after that.
Actually, it's 4711.
Have you had any experience?
Oh, yes, a little.
And he said, would you marry me if ever you left Ronnie Knight? So I said, oh, Kenny, that's sweet. What a nice thing to say. So he said, mind you, there'd be no sex. I said, well, sod you then.
She was just a ball of fun, you know. She'd bounce onto the set and be like that all day. I don't know. She didn't switch it on. It wasn't switched on. It's who she was.
Oh, Mr. Simpkins, that was wonderful. I'm sure I'll never get my jaws off as slickly as that.
The hairdressing lady said, oh, we're doing Cleo, and I've been told to put a black wig on you. And she got this black wig and put it on me. I said, oh, I look just like my mum. And I said, oh, they're doing Cleopatra, are they? Which I thought was a wonderful idea, because there'd been all this hype with Elizabeth Taylor. Cleopatra, but I never got to do it. Kenny said I was rude to Gerald Thomas, the director. When I look at it now, it's such a brilliant carry-on, and I do think Amanda Barr is absolutely wonderful.
One bite from this is enough.
You're right. One bite's enough for anyone. It's shocking.
Friends! Romans!
I know.
Infamy! Infamy! They've all got it in for me.
Kenneth used anything to get a laugh. Kenneth was always wicked on screen. And there was one section of Cleo where they're fighting in a bath of milk, and Kenneth is backing me into a corner. And as we moved into the corner during the rehearsal, he pushed himself up against me. And we rehearsed. I said, don't do that. And I said, no, stop it. Jerry, I will not have this. And I stopped the rehearsal. He said, what's the matter? I said, Kenneth is not behaving as a leading actor should. He said, what's he doing? I said, he's pushing his bum right at me. It's not fair. I can't get out of it. Ken said, oh, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Sorry, it was an accident. I said, it wasn't an accident. You were doing it for 30 seconds or that, so don't do it again.
Then there was an occasion when Kenneth Williams fell down the back of a flat on the floor and grazed his penis. And we sent him along to the nurse. And he was gone a long time. I said to Gerald, I better go and see what he's got to. Well, this nurse, I must tell you, bless her heart, you couldn't have had a more unattractive geezer if you found one. And there was Kenneth Williams lying on the table, and this nurse slapping Savlon on his penis. And I said, come on, Kenneth, that's enough. And he came back.
The Ides of March.
Oh, shut up, you silly old faggot.
Hugely offensive. Everything that is, but the more offensive they are, the better they are. They're homophobic. They're so racist that it goes beyond the pale.
It has been ordained by the prophet Mustafa Ali.
Mustafa Ali!
They're sexist to the point of, you know, you would be legally challenged in any court in the world. And that's why we love them.
Scrubber!
Scrubber? Funny name for a girl.
This whole generation has been brought up so kind of straitjacketed with this political correctness. I think they just become funnier.
Most comedy would go out of the window if political correctness really took hold. There'd be absolutely nothing that you could make fun of. And that would never do, would it?
Oh, I do feel queer.
Back in the 60s and 70s, you know, homosexuality wasn't as acceptable as it is today. And like, we used to laugh at people, oh, yeah, they're all cool, queer, they're queer, they're queer. We didn't really understand what being queer meant.
Yes, well, I'm no good at that, sir. But I know where I am with an iron.
But when you look back at that, and he was overtly queer, so queer, in-your-face type of queer, they had to laugh at that anyway.
It's not homosexuality, it's camp. He wasn't homosexual in the movies, really. You watch something like Carry On Camping, and you've got this very disturbing thought that he's a headmaster to these 16-year-old girls, including Barbara Windsor, obviously. And just for one instant, he's attracted to it.
What a rear-wheel drive, eh?
Yes, fascinating the way it... what? Absolutely disgusting. Really, it's disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful, yes.
I've always led a very sheltered life, and before this, no man has ever tried to force his attentions on me.
I can well believe it.
But that's farcical because you've got this huge, lovely Hattie. Bless her, you know, gentle and kind, and all she wants is a man in her life, and she wants Kenneth Williams, but he doesn't want to know. And it's not so much he's homosexual, it's just he doesn't want to know.
Don't rush me. I think you'll find it's worth waiting for.
Yeah, so it's Christmas, but you won't find me stuffing your turkey.
We can pulverize the carry-ons as far as political correctness is concerned, but you can never defeat them as far as laughter is concerned.
Thank you, madam. And may I have your name, please?
They call me Basti.
Really?
Well, the female characters were like blatantly sexual.
We await your pleasure, masters.
They were part of the furniture. They were sexual decoration for the men to have a fun time with.
You have never kissed a woman?
Oh, yes. But never one wearing a veil.
What difference does my veil make?
Well, it would be like sucking a toffee with the paper on.
Well, I don't remember being so earthy as to the character that Peter and Jerry obviously saw some earthiness in me. I studied belly dancing from a wonderfully rotund girl who told me how to roll my stomach, and it was great fun.
There's a lot of flesh being exposed, and we've got that locker room sort of humour. You see a little bit of a breast, a little bit of a backside, some nice lovely legs, all flashing around, everyone's falling into each other.
Why didn't you wait until we're in the tunnel?
I thought I was.
France was years ahead of us, and Italy were miles ahead of us with their films as far as the way they treated sex. I mean, we would see a little bit of thigh and we'd get terribly excited in England, wouldn't we?
Your wives? There we are. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Friday.
That's it.
Well, I'll be damned. Well, at least you've got no problem with what to do with your spare time.
Oh, I don't know. There's not much doing at the weekend.
People said the carry-ons were sexist. They demeaned women. They were crude, they were vulgar, they were immoral. But in fact, the case is exactly the opposite of that. No male character in a carry-on film ever committed adultery. If Sid James, even when he was just going out, if you like, with Joan Sims, they were boyfriend and girlfriend in Carry On Camping, him and his girlfriend never stayed in the same tent together.
Well, it seems silly to get wet through again putting up the other tent.
That's exactly what we thought. So?
So why don't you both sleep in the car?
And yet this was supposed to be at the end of the 1960s, which was all about sexual freedom. And there was a very nice, touching scene in Karen at Your Convenience, where Sid James has been chasing Joan Sims for the whole film. They've been out together for a day in Brighton, and they're standing outside their houses, and they have this whole discussion about, you know, talking about coffee. Would you like to come in for coffee? But in fact, we know what they wanted and what he wanted.
Of course, if Fred did get to hear about it.
Yes, it's quite right. Not worth it, really. Not just for a cup of tea. Ah, well.
You know how the neighbours round here talk.
So even when he had his opportunity, he didn't take it himself. So people who say the films were sexist and the films were immoral and they were very crude should actually take a closer look.
Good night, Sid.
Night. Sleep tight.
Tight's the word.
Bloody neighbours.
The women characters are actually come off far better. They were far, far stronger than the men.
I'm ready.
The best example of that is Valerie Leon in Carry On Again, Doctor. Very attractive, very vampish, heaving cleavage. Sort of poor Jim Dell doesn't know which way to look.
Point out that I like my employers to make their needs absolutely clear, Doctor.
I would like to have a look at my paper.
It's there for you, Doctor.
Oh, yes, I know it is.
Naturally, I had control over the men. After all, I was often cast for my physique. I was tall, I was well endowed. I created a fantasy, an unobtainable fantasy. Carry On Up the Jungle, I was the leader of the Lubby-Dubbies, a tribe of women that had no men.
In our country, there is only one useful occupation for men.
What's that?
Why? To mate.
Mate? Don't want to waste time hanging about here, do we? Let's get working.
Hang on, hang on. Harrison, please, I'm on the wrong job. Oh, put me on the dole. Oh, no. Ah, oh, perfect.
What makes good humour is a situation that people can identify with, which is why some of the most popular carry-on films were the ones based around hospitals. And we all know what we feel like when we go into hospital. And what the carry-on films did was actually demystify some of that, saying you can go into hospital, we know you're ill, you need to get better, but you can have a bit of a laugh at the same time.
Matrons of hospitals say to me that when your carry-ons are on, the patients all feel better. There's a man in the studio here whose wife is in an invalid chair and only feels better when she can wheel it up to the screen and watch it carry on.
Oh, you idiot!
They've started early today.
I only want to get you into bed.
I'll say one thing for them, it's a nice warm bed. Should be. They only took him out half an hour ago.
Wilfred Oakes in one carry-on film has the daffodil shoved up his bum as a joke. In a later carry-on film, Frankie Howard's in bed and the nurse is rearranging some flowers and has a daffodil.
Oh, no, you don't. Oh, I saw that film.
Which is great. Die Hard doesn't do that. They don't do that. Never did that in the Death Wish movies. Charles Bronson never said, oh, yeah, before, made a little gag of the fact, you know, this is just a series of films we're making.
You can see them coming a mile off, can't you? But you still can't help laughing. I think that's the joy of them. Barbara Windsor would go up and say, that's a nice pair, and Peter Gilmore, whoever it would go, well, yeah, that's not too bad either.
Oh, what a lovely-looking pair.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Carry On Again is the only time I was very nervous about doing one of the carry-ons, because I looked at the script and I'd seen this scene where she's laying on a bed and then suddenly the blanket's pulled away from her and she gets up and there's these three hearts. And I got very, very nervous and I dieted.
Just for interest, what were you advertising?
Bristol's bouncing baby food.
I can see the connection.
And Gerald, when I showed myself, like, he went, well, that's the gag about Bristol's out the window. What have you done to yourself?
Can you see them?
Oh, yes, not half.
Do you feel any fever or giddiness?
Yes, I do feel a bit, huh?
I meant Miss Locks.
Well, that one's all right.
Will you be wanting an X-ray, Doctor?
Pardon?
Do you wish an X-ray?
Pull the main fuse out!
I always suggested that I do my own stunts. Jerry usually kept the stunts till the end of the film. That's in case I broke my neck. He could always cut to a wide shot and have the stuntman looking that big. In Carry On Again, Doctor, as the doctor, I dived onto a trolley. And this part of the arm was banging on metal. It was very painful during the next take. And within 10 minutes, there was a huge patch of red there, and I was taken off to hospital immediately, and I had an emergency operation. I came back the next day with my arm all encased here, and Jerry said, this is the day we do another stunt, which is you in the hammock.
Oh, I see you've got a hammock.
He said, please, just before you're due to go under the floor, do turn round so that we can see that it is you and not a stuntman.
I wouldn't use it. Oh, well.
I wonder what they wanted.
I think it was one of my favourite scenes in any of the carry-ons. I really was working out a lot of fantasies during that scene because it was a gorgeous dress and I liked the way my hair was done, and then I encounter Sid playing Rumpo, and I say that my name is Belle, but my intimate friends call me Ding Dong.
My intimate friends call me Ding Dong.
I'd like to give you a clang sometime.
Really subtle lines like that.
All right, Sugar Date. Hold it right here, Sugar. Thanks for the lift.
I have a good ass, no?
We had a camel on Carry On, Follow That Camel, that wouldn't walk on sand. We couldn't get the bugger to walk on sand.
He'd been used to walking up and down the concrete at the zoo, and when it saw this sand, it thought, hello, hello.
So we had to put this metal stuff underneath and then put sand on top of it. And then he walked on it.
This isn't too enjoyable. We're really way out on the sands. The wind does blow and it gets in your eye. But I think the picture is in the tradition of the Carry On series. It'll possibly be the best one they've made because I'm in it.
There's nothing like an old-fashioned waltz.
The classic one for me, and I suppose for most other people, is Carry On Up the Khyber.
Have a taste of this, you swine!
Rank stupidity.
Every 10 years, the British Film Institute, in its official publication Sight and Sound, has collected the top 10 films of all time. And this has been published as a definitive list, invariably topped by Citizen Kane. It was astounding to discover in the last list that Professor Colin McCabe had actually listed 2 carry-ons in his list of the 10 greatest films ever made.
I must admit, several people were very upset, but then that's what I intended.
It is clearly an abrogation of responsibility to place 2 carry-ons in the list of the greatest films ever made.
It was tongue-in-cheek, but it wasn't tongue-in-cheek. I mean, if you came to me and said, now, you've got to save, you know, you have to decide in the next hour which of the 100 films from the last 100 years of British cinema are going to be saved, I think there'd be several carry-on films in there, and that's quite, I mean, that would be quite serious.
And may his radiance light up your life. And up yours.
Carry On Up the Khyber. I would always put in my 10 best British films ever.
Before I put a carry-on film in my list of the greatest films ever made, I'd have to look up and see Flying Pigs.
I think you've got to think of the dinner party as they sit there being bombarded on all sides, and Sir Sidney Rough Diamond is just pretending that absolutely nothing is happening. Peter Butterworth absolutely kind of terrified and just not understanding at all what kind of insane world he's fallen into. I think that particular kind of sequence is probably my favourite of all.
Oh, God, it's 3 horrendous days, I can tell you. People dropping sacks of muck from the ceiling.
Lydia! I see you've got a little plaster.
Oh, it was a nightmare, but it was still terrific fun.
Bernard Bresslaw, he had that lovely line that Tolly Rossmore wrote.
That will teach them to bend turbans on the buses.
I think it was a wonderful line.
Bravo! Encore! Stop!
There's nothing to be afraid of. Oh, I don't know, though.
Sidney, dear, are you all right?
Oh, top hole, dear, top hole.
I thought you'd have coffee in the lounge.
Yes, why not?
Oh, dear.
That's all right. We'll clear it up in the morning.
Sid, from that wonderful thing at the end of Carrying Out the Khyber, when he's standing there in all that desolation, the doors hanging off, and it's that wonderful, leave it, we'll tidy up in the morning. That whole Sid's in charge, we all love Sid. Sid's your dad.
He was the hero, he was the star of the film, you know, and it was more personal to us. It wasn't Paul Newman, it wasn't Humphrey Bogart, it was Sid James, who we'd grown up with. Sid, who, you know, could live next door to you. He wasn't a movie star, he was a person you could relate to.
Sid James really encapsulates, for me, the carry-on film.
Yes.
Oh, I can hardly believe it. Little me in the King's Arms.
Well, it's the best boozer in town.
Sid was the older statesman. He'd experienced it. He'd been there already. He'd done it. He'd bought the T-shirt. You know, he'd done all this stuff. That's great. And Sid was the man. He was the man's man.
Excuse me. Jordan? Sir? Don't disturb us, please. We're going to have a bit of tipping.
It's not time for tiffin, sir.
Mind your own business. Any time is tipping time.
The cold wind of change is going to blow through this camp. This I promise you.
I walked along this pier with Sid James, Kenneth, Charles Hawtrey, Bernie Breslau.
Have a couple. Much better for you.
Oh, do you think I ought to? I mean, I've heard that shellfish do very strange things. In a sex way, I mean.
Really? Ooh, let's watch him for a bit then.
Carry On at Your Convenience is the picture postcard come to life. I think because of the atmosphere of the film, it couldn't have been really anywhere else.
By 1970, in films like Carry On Loving and At Your Convenience, the cast were joined by younger actors to play the love interests. They got Richard O'Callaghan and Jackie Piper, and they were perfect.
Louis.
Darling. When I'd started filming, they rang up and actually
offered me a contract for the next 2 years.
In Carry On Loving, I played a character called Bertram Muffet. I turned up as as this completely green young man who decided it was time he had a girlfriend.
We'll just get a few details. Age?
Oh, 17, I think.
17.
Well, I thought the younger she was, the longer she'd last.
No. I want your details, your age.
I meet this very beautiful young girl. She's sitting there waiting for a photographer to come and take some model photographs of her in her underwear. Somehow, in the usual kind of Talbot Rothwell way, we do think we are talking to the right person at the time.
Okay, I'm ready. Where do you want me?
Well, I mean, couldn't we just sit and talk for a bit?
Well, come on, then. Where is it?
Is what?
Your camera.
Oh, but I haven't got one.
You're not a photographer.
Oh, what an idiot I've been. Excuse me.
Going all the way?
And now we see Miss Fosdyke about to uncover something of enormous interest.
That's not Miss Fosdyke. They've sent the wrong film. This is monstrous. They sent the wrong film. I do apologize, but what can I do? Show it again! Show it again!
They constantly were playing with the BBFC and with John Trevelyan to see how far they could go.
We were always having a problem with the censors. We used to play a game with the censor. We used to put things in purposely for him to take out.
I think Cardew Robinson was in that film as a fakir, and Bernie Breslau went, fakir off, because he was bold with him.
Bring on the dancing girls. Get rid of this idiot.
Fakir, off.
There's sufficient pause between fakir and off to appease Trevelyan, the censor.
My, but you got a big one.
I'm from Texas, ma'am. We all got big ones down there.
Peter and Gerald had trouble with the censor. We had to actually have the gun in vision. That made it all right. But they didn't like it when I just said, my, but you got a big one there, which I suppose is understandable.
We had the same thing with my friend the Count.
My brother, the Count, wishes to meet him.
That was in the French Revolution.
Just the way you say it, you see.
Aircraft reconnaissance! I bet none of you can tell the difference between a high uncle and a Bristol.
Well, Bristols usually come in pairs.
I said to Gerald, can I try something with Windsor Davis? My line is supposed to be, yes, Bristols come in pairs. He said, no, you recognise the difference between a Bristol, a Heinkel, and a Bristol? And I said, no, but I know a Fokker when I see one. Looking at him, and he went, and he walked out.
I bet none of you can tell the difference between a couple of Heinkels and a pair of Bristols.
No, but I can recognise a Fokker when I see one.
Good boy. That is why you is a sergeant.
I think pronunciation, I think Fokker was just a bit too blatant. But it's very funny.
In our film, it's the first time when all the girls come out of the barracks. You saw blatantly a girl's breast in a carry-on film.
How dare you come on parade improperly dressed? What the devil's going on here? Why are these men half naked? Because, sir, you said they were to come on parade wearing trousers, and that is all. I did not.
Oh, yes, you did, sir.
We said it would have to be cut down to typical carry-on, which is the suggestion of bare breast, but very, very brief.
What the devil's going on here? Why are they on parade half naked? Because, sir, you said they were to come on parade wearing trousers, and that is all. I did not.
Oh, yes, you did, sir.
Quiet!
Ooh.
Bare-breasted shots have been replaced by flash shots of bare breasts, which simply establish the joke. We accept this, says the examiner.
It doesn't matter now, but I think at the time, I think it was a bit gratuitous.
They could get that kind of breast nudity in other films. That's not what they went to carry on for.
Oh, Tiger, I think you're wonderful. When are you going to savage me?
If only you was a man, I would sort you out.
There was certainly a decline in yours truly. I mean, that great face which was coming out of that uniform. I mean, it was horrific, dear. I thought, go home and put your feet up, love.
You got nothing to worry about. I should be very happy to look after you today.
Oh, Dar.
Sid was a darling man. That's the only way I can describe him. He was always very kind to the ladies and always very protective about the ladies, and he was a very, very sad loss.
Sid was a very nice man to everybody.
There's been a lot of unpleasant things written about Sid James since he died over 20 years ago, and it's far from the truth. The man was a very kind, generous performer.
It's only the media and the press, they want to get a hold of something sensational to write.
It's just this intense interest in people's private lives. I think it's very unfair. Unfair on Val and his kids. A happily married family man is the man that I knew.
I think it's quite unnecessary. Why can't the poor man and his family, I hasten to add, be left alone? He gave the public a great deal of enjoyment.
Oh, come on, Kenny. It's all over.
Oh, no, it's not all over.
He was a wonderful man, Kenny, and extraordinary raconteur, very intelligent, intellectual even, you know, on occasions.
He would go to a restaurant hoping to be recognized, although when he went in, his first thing he would say was, oh, we must have me back to the restaurant. Because if they know I'm here, there's going to be a constant stream of autograph hunters coming over. Oh, no, must have me back to the restaurant, yes. And he would sit in a little obscure corner of the restaurant. Sometimes he would get a blind erected around the table so that nobody could see him. But then he would talk in this outrageous way and be flirting with the waiters and say, oh, hello, Silvano, yes, love to see you. What have you got on the menu today? Meatballs? Oh, lovely meatballs, yes. You see, and you do all that. And of course everybody would know he was there.
I didn't really realise, sadly, until I read his diaries, that he was really very fond of me. And I just wish I'd been a better friend to him, really. He didn't have a home life, a private life. You know, he didn't have someone to say, you're okay.
Still wouldst thou sing? And I have ears in vain to thy high requiem become a sod. Oh, what's the use?
Can't ever believe he killed himself. Nobody would make me believe Kenny Williams killed himself. Nobody.
We were invited by the finance people to make this Carry On Columbus. Sounded like a good idea.
How many fingers? 8. 8 exactly. And here's your 800 Maravedas. 1, 2, 3, 8.
I did it as a favor to Jerry Thomas. He said, let's try something. A lot of the old gang aren't with us, but we can get together some of the old faces and put together a film that may change. He said, I don't know, it's called Carry On Columbus. As I said, it was a favor to Jerry, but it was also a sort of trip back down memory lane, hoping to recapture what the old Carry On films had been about.
And this is Marco, the serial killer.
A serial killer?
Beats his victims to death with a sack of Rice Krispies.
The story was not a very strong story. The jokes were very feeble.
They wanted to cast certain people who they thought were up-and-coming alternative comedians, which I'm afraid didn't fit in.
And they all had their little in-jokes when they're sitting together. And this time, there were members of the Carry On team who felt like outsiders when they joined them.
Next! Ah! Fatima, you cut my ear off! Don't worry, sir. I'll soon stitch it back on. Hey?
You've only got to look at Carry On Columbus, where
quite a number of modern comedians were trying to do the same thing, to see how they simply couldn't time it as well as the old boys.
What are you looking at?
Sharks. Man-eating sharks. This sea's full of them. Hey, you mind you don't fall in.
My goodness. You don't think they'd eat me whole?
No, I'm told they spit that out.
It's funny, I've shut that picture out completely. I think Columbus doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. So if you said to me, what was your funniest gag in the picture, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember, because I don't want to.
What makes you think he's up to it?
I have seen his testimonials.
There was something a bit strange about it. Maybe it should have been called Carry Off Columbus. I don't know.
I had to come back. I had no idea. It was a very important decision because it was the last film Jerry made.
Kenneth Williams, 26. That includes That's Carry On. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Fan letters just keep coming. I don't think it will ever end. Each new generation of youngsters see them on the television, and they just love them.
They go all over the world. They're shown in America. They're shown in Australia all the time. I think they go to countries that don't even exist.
Letters come from all over the world. Australia, Canada, Norway, Germany.
That'll go on forever. If I were alive in 100 years' time, I bet my bottom dollar there'd be a lot of people watching the carry-ons on telly, and possibly on video as well, or whatever we watched them on in those days.
Well, of course, how do you thank people who have given us so much laughter for the past 40 years? We decided it was only right and fitting to bring back the stars and the people who work behind the cameras and the script writers for us to say thank you for 40 years of carry-on laughter, one big reunion at Pinewood Studios. It was a wonderful day and a very emotional one as well.
It was surprising how many people turned up. A lot of people had to be turned away.
Well, I just hope you'll be able to see from there, OK? This is for Kenny.
Hello.
There we are, 140, 150? Yep. 160? 170? Nope. No, I think Bob should have this anyway, don't you? Yeah, go on, Barbara.
40 years of carry-ons, and I couldn't have made one without a writer. The man who pioneered the carry-ons, his name is Norman Hudis, and he's here today, and I want him to stand up to let people see what a genius looks like. The director of the carry-ons was Speedy Gonzales Gerald Thomas, who went through the schedule like the Ferrari he used to drive. My God, after the second day's shooting, they used to say to me in the corridor, "How many days ahead, Gerald? How many weeks?" Wonderful, wonderful man. I can't say much about him. On top of all that, of course, we had a fantastic labor force from Pinewood Studios. The Sparks, the Chippies, but most important of all, of course, were the artists. I loved them very much and would do anything for them except pay them more money.
Some of us are doing.
Outrageous entertainment.
They sum up a type of people who never were in an England that never existed. And that's exactly what Carry On is like. people were never like that, really, and England was never that pleasant a place to live, but we believe that it might have been because of Carry On.
Of course, they're all raving mad, you know.